realize that knowing that cycles also come to an end is important, that they have their peaks and their dips, because sometimes we enter a cycle and it could feel, I mean, the ones that feel good, I don't think people are questioning too much.
No.
You go with it,
right.
And you ride that wave. But something important to know when it's going well too is that if you still don't find balance and you go too high, you're going to go real low when the cycle hits its down period. So, and when it's in its down period, you know, if you be still and balanced, then it's just going to also make its way back up again.
Right.
And I think that's part of what you're bringing up, is that right now that we're in this down part of the cycle, literally down, that people, you know, you might have more time in your hands than you're used to.
Yeah.
You might have
more time than you're used to. That's always uncomfortable, right? People having to be with themselves. I'm seeing it all over. Lots of people, families, parents and children, relationships, people who don't have to go to work. They're constantly with each other, and who they need to be, who they were able to be when they went away from home, and then coming back and deciding like, okay, now I have to do this. It's like you don't get that little reprieve, that little space. And so it's about creating space. And I just had a really cool conversation yesterday with a beautiful friend, and she was talking about how getting into the fall, and like you said, we're connected to these cycles, we're connected to these events. So Dia de los Muertos is coming up, and for her, it's not like this big celebratory event. It's this. It's harsh. It's deep. It's heavy, and I think that as we go closer to these holidays, that if we haven't done our work now, and we haven't brought to the surface those things that bother us on a regular basis about ourselves and the people we can share space with, we're going to have a rough time, you know.
I think that highlighting Dia de los Muertos specifically, since you mentioned, is we're also coming into the fall equinox, right?
Yes.
So all that is connected, and the fall equinox is actually a time where rest begins to happen. But even it connected to the Day of the Dead. Day of the Dead has been happening, like the ancients. It started in June, and now, even entering a new age, the veil between the spirit world and the physical world is a lot thinner. And the way you might identify it is your dreams may have been more vivid. You may feel actual connections to people who have passed, that you feel like if they're present or you're speaking with them. Or even forces you don't know, but when you're in sacred places, like in mountains and rivers, but you feel a connection of a life force. Those are signs of the veil thinning. Sometimes also not being able to escape those emotions that usually you could bury down is another sign of that. And in preparation for that, I think that a lot of it is about what we retain when we're feeling these things, because these forces are moving regardless. They're moving through us. You're going to feel them. But what you identify, we're talking about that, and what you identify is you, is where you can get stuck sometimes, because you feel like you are this sadness, or you are this immovable force that sometimes, because of the cycles, you may feel like getting your goals done, your projects, you feel like not invested, or you feel like it's happening too slow. But that's not necessarily just you. It's like you're not the only force functioning. The cycle has slowed down a little. The sun isn't going to be as bright for the next few months.
That's really important. I mean, think about it. Like, we get down when we're not up.
Right, exactly.
We're not supposed to be up 24/7. There's nothing in nature that's up 24/7. There's no flower that's like, boom, bright and shiny. It even closes at night, and it rests, and it's quiet, and it just doesn't show. It's like you're not supposed to do that 24/7. And this is part of that time. Like I said, that this woman said, it's just like I just feeling the heaviness, and I said, and isn't that okay?
Right.
Isn't that okay that you get a chance to feel it? Well, I'm really feeling it. I said, when was the last time you really felt it? Never gave it a moment. Didn't give it that time. Didn't give it that space. And I feel like that's what we're talking about. It's like we need to give it that time and space. We've had 8 months go by. Did you give value to those feelings that might have been, cycling through you, not just through the month, but through the day? And now we're in these things are starting to come down. Plants are losing their leaves. Flowers are not making new flowers. It's not going to be bright and shiny. We have to bring that bright and light within us.
And talking about bringing it, we also have to gather it. And like anything, if you've ever been backpacking or even on a hike, you got to ration out what you do. So you could ration out your energy too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have it all into deadlines, whether they're for career or self, because we put deadlines on our own goals and our own manifestations as well. And so you have to ration out your energy. If you need, you touched on self-care too somewhere, and you were speaking about. And, self-care isn't always, I've had conversations with friends too, or with clients, right, where if an oil or a flower hits self-love, it's like, the question's like, well, how do I
do
this?
self-love?
Yeah, you could take care of yourself by giving yourself time off, or going on, some people are like, oh, I take myself out to eat. That's like the tip of the iceberg.
That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah,
that's not the day-to-day self-love.
Yeah, it's not. Sometimes it's actually the hardest part of it is honoring that voice that you're actually ignoring. So if one of my things is, I know this is a really simple one that's actually hard on the being themselves. Like, I always eat at 11 p.m., which I don't, but I always eat at 11 p.m. I know I shouldn't do that. I need to stop. But like, you go a year saying, oh, it's because I eat at 11 p.m., So actually honoring that voice, because it's your own body saying, dude, please stop eating this time. Stop free. I don't got energy in the morning. My feet hurt. It's honoring that part that is part of self-love. The part of maybe my boss is driving me crazy, but I need that job, and they do this and they do that. This is a hard one. I know jobs are hard for people to express self-love, and because maybe that's not where you need to be. Maybe. And I know, especially right now, since you're talking about a lot of the changes that people have gone through, work is a big one for a lot of people, and school, like you said. But maybe sometimes it brings us to that crossroads of maybe this isn't even the best way to be handling my life or my children's life in the first place.
Yeah, how many times has the pandemic is ridiculous for me, and I know it's been stressful for a lot of people, but there have been some really amazing transformations and transitions for some people, and some of them one is seeing the value of being close to their kids, and the other is seeing the value of not being in a toxic space of work. People have been enjoying doing work away from a toxic space, and they're starting to see what really they've been in because they're not in it anymore, and that awareness is coming forward for them to make some different assessments or decisions, or and the government paying for a lot of people to be home has helped too, because this is what I'm saying, some of you who have been able to benefit from that, you have an opportunity to explore what does float your boat and turn you on and bring joy to your heart, and don't waste that time.
And some of you who may have just lost a job and feel like, well, I don't know what to do next, or I haven't given into my uniqueness. I mean, for two people who live their unique through their uniqueness on many levels, I mean, can't we agree that it's a challenge? You didn't always get to be like, I just get to be myself
It's
every day. Yeah, you're not always the most popular.
No.
You go through some times where you don't have excess. Because I've never found that I don't have what I need.
Right. We always have what we need.
Mm-hmm.
We value those basics, right?
Yes.
I mean, we value how we gather food,
shelter.
food, clothing. Those are the basics, and so those things we're confident in. We rest in that, but we don't have excess. And when it does show up, it's kind of a fun celebration.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the journey that we chose, right? Mm-hmm. But you're right, it's not popular.
And I think way more people who haven't brought themselves to that, they might find themselves there, where it's like, well, I'm gonna have to do like this alternate version of teaching my children or of working. I think those are like two of the biggest ones for people right now. One thing, I'm definitely not an educator. Like, I see what teachers do, and I know I'm not a teacher. One of my favorite teachers, Miss Christina Hawkins out there, the patience I've seen her have with children, I'm like, I could have it with mine, but I don't know about 20, 30 of them and not just lose it on them, you know?
Bless the teachers.
Yes, for sure.
Bless the teachers.
What this excites me about, though, is that perhaps because the ones that are in the system, like teaching through LAUSD or whatever districts, I know they have a lot of restrictions put on them, or they're dictated how they need to teach. But something I see and excites me is that I'm sure a lot of new curriculums will come out of that, you know? And Mishbe, you're a great teacher too. For real, somebody that my daughters, that you see, like that school and those teachers that my daughters have always just identified with and learned from more than book learning, because they're big on critical thinking, makes me see that it's very plausible for these creative people to come up with their own unique way of imparting life's lessons, which are the most important really for our children to be getting to children. And I am excited to see what comes of that. And yeah, all of us had to be brought to a place of discomfort in order to create a new comfort.
Yes. Out of trauma, crises, discomfort comes, they say the mother of invention is out of necessity. We are in a place where we need to look at the world differently. If you feel limited in any way, or you feel constrained in any way, this is your opportunity to find some freedom in exploration, right? Exploration and creativity. And if your creativity is blocked, then this is the opportunity for you to connect with someone or speak.
Start clearing your waters.
Yes, cleaning. Always cleaning. You clean out your body, you clean out your mind. You clean out your home, you clean out your mind. You clean out the residual clutter that you hold on to that no longer gives life. You clean out your mind.
And that goes back to the cycles that you're not done. And you are going to have to do it again. It's like my daughter, when I tell her we need to sweep in a day after I tell her, she's like, didn't we do it yesterday? And I think a lot of people feel like, exactly, it's like, you got to get used to that every day. You need to, you clear and reset every day. And then there's bigger cycles. And a beautiful thing about the cycles, so then there's bigger cycles, right? There's the month, there's the week, and then there's the month, and then there's the year order, and then there's 10 years. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a really big cycle, which is known as ages, like when they've talked about the Bronze Age or the Stellar Age. And those ages come in, I don't know the exact number, but it was like about 2050 years.
I'm going to live that long.
Well, an amazing, beautiful thing is that all of us who are alive right now to hear this and to live this, is we're alive for that change of cycle, for that reset. We're not 100 years away from it.
No.
We're at the months. Like, it's happening already. It doesn't just happen on December 21st, 2020. It's like already happening. That's part of what we're feeling. And if we want to, humans, we want to make sense of our experiences. I had to say that when you want to make sense, you got to also ask yourself how deep you're willing to go to, one, master the craft of life, and in that, feel healthy as you move through it. Because when you feel healthy as you move through it, doesn't mean that things aren't falling apart around you necessarily.
No. That's the thing. That goes back to what we said about, we want everything to be happy and joyful. Like, oh, I chose this new path. This must be like the most exciting thing. And I'm just going to be like flying and flying. It doesn't work that way. Sorry. In the beginning, it's almost like,
Anxiety is a great thing. That's one thing.
It's going to take a busting of yourself to take even just that first step. Like, I'm not going to do this work anymore. It's like you're busting the familiar. It's like, I fit in this jacket,
true shell,
and then I'm gonna bust it open, and that can't always be feeling good. There's gonna be a little bit of pain in that, a little great, maybe even great discomfort.
Don't mourning.
Worry. That's normal. It's supposed to be uncomfortable because you're growing into a new space, and you have to break free from the old one. And I don't know. I mean, I guess if somebody was helping you, it would be nice, but that doesn't, sometimes you got to do this one on your own.
Almost always, whether you're in a relationship or not, there's these spaces that someone cannot go along with you. I mean, that's one of the challenges of being a parent, is that we want to protect our children. And some people have a hard time knowing that when I'm not there, they may suffer. But that's how it is within us. There's some places I know I can't go with my children because there's some places people just cannot go with me.
No.
I barely know them. So how I got to explore them myself before I could even externalize what that is.
Right. Having these kinds of conversations, though, it helps you like unravel the labyrinth, all these dead end spaces that we went through, and somebody just kind of being your sounding board. But ultimately, you have to walk through that maze. And you have to like remember, oh yeah, I remember I don't like that, so I'm not gonna go down that road. I'm gonna just go to the left this time. Or like you said, going to your daily practice, what centers you and grounds you, you go within and you're just like, do I have a yes for this? Mm-hmm. And that helps you move through the discomfort and the uncertainty, because it's uncertain waters. This whole time, into the next future is uncertain waters. We don't have to have a dramatic expression about it. We just need to be calm and quiet and courageous. I like those 3 C's: calm, quiet, and courageous.
Yeah, and that's the most important, because what mastery of life looks like once you get to a certain age is just that what brings you to change and what brings you to acceptance isn't necessarily everything falling apart.
No.
It's the knowing that things come to an end.
Yes.
And so they transform, and there'll be just transformation from it. And if I'm still enough, I'll know when to act. And I know that that's just not something very much promoted in the mass of society, is like stillness, acceptance, not having to, we're in a fire age, like where everything's about, you take it and you level it if it's not what you need. And that's needed. Fire is needed, but we're actually entering something very different now. We're entering an air age, and the age of air has a lot to do with she's and that has a lot to do with organization, things being very light and fast moving, which is why, we're at the end of the year almost.
Yeah, we are.
And it has flown by. It has. And I think each day flies by. We're blessed enough to have like quite a few days off a week.
Yeah.
but the one they still flies by.
It does. Yeah. Um, so that continues to go back. What is your daily practice? I that's almost always I ask people, what is your daily practice? How do you ground? How do you center? And 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 it doesn't stop.
Grounding is a great point because, like, since I did say we're moving into air, grounding is super important right now. Grounding because even an idea, the mind it goes all night. You dream, keep moving.
Yeah.
The mind doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So how do you find grounding?
Daily practice, maybe.
It's as simple as putting your feet in the earth in the morning. If you don't have that, even eating earthy foods helps.
Drinking a glass of water when you first wake up.
Yes, it's a great way to ground yourself.
I have thought about this for a long time because I feel like that has been the foundation of what has gotten me through each of my challenges. You've seen me go through many. And I'm going to say that there's all kinds of ways of grounding. I'm going to throw out some examples. I've had, for myself, it was braiding my hair every morning. For a while, it was fixing my bed before I did anything. I would get out of bed and I would fix it every morning. And that was my prayer, just fixing my bed. And at the end of the day, I can go back to my bedroom and I'd be like, there's a safe place. I created this. I created this safe place. I can fall into it. Another one, like I said, is drinking a glass of water. It was a ritual to just drink that first glass of water and make it my prayer. I remember when I was living with my mom that she would go outside and sweep outside and water her garden. And she did it religiously every day. And as I watched her, you could just see that the times that she didn't do it, she was frazzled. It was just her nerves weren't connected. But when she did, it was like I could talk to her. Her day was in order. Those are so simple, and that goes back to self-love. When you have a daily practice, you are grounding. You are making that connection. You're saying, I'm connecting to all that is. You said that the other day that we talked. Right?
It's like you respond to roll call. The animals do it every morning.
I love it.
The birds start singing. The water starts bubbling. Like I said, already had been. But
no, it actually does change in the daytime to the nighttime. Yes, it does.
So the natural forces respond to the other natural forces. It's a relation. We're in a constant copulation with life. And when we see that all our actions are about that recognition, that connection of that we're actually present beyond this physical, dense matter we see in front of each other. That does help the spirit. It's not just to escape. Can it be an escape? It can, but it isn't. It's actually recognizing every part of yourself. It's like when we come back to the body, if someone's sick, it's common for you to hear either of us say the body's trying to communicate something to you. Well, that happens on so many levels where you, because you are an extension of the universe, are trying to get your own attention. So when you start your day by saying, I'm present,
available.
Let's start this. It makes a big difference. Like I mentioned, one of mine is breathing through my 2 nostrils. If I'm not going to sit up and actually meditate, I would love to, and I only get to do it rarely because I don't fall asleep early enough, but to greet the sun as it rises is a great one. You could even go back to sleep after you do that if you have to. I've done that. Sweeping my home was one of my first ones because I didn't grow up having to sweep every day, but I had my first teacher. That was the first thing that grounded me, was sweeping my home every day. And all these acts, like some people, I mean, a lot of us I know are familiar with prayer, you go to ceremony, but some people don't know what that even means. So I really don't even use the word prayer much because I know it's about connecting. And that's what I want to highlight, is that with my daughters, I speak to them. It's like, how are we connecting with our higher selves and our inner selves, our inner world that is present too. And that's one of them, like I said, was sweeping,
Yeah.
Meditating. Also, for some people, from what I know, in numerology, everyone has a different thing that helps them because of your elemental makeup. Some people, it's first thing in the morning taking a walk.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
those things.
And it's usually so simple that we don't even realize how powerful it is. And that's even making a cup of tea. I say making a cup of tea is a prayer, because you have to stop. You have to heat the water. I like loose herbs because it takes a little more time. You have to put the herbs into the bowl. You wait for the water to boil. You pour it in and you let it sit for a few minutes. And I use that time as another prayer. It's like the opportunities are always there. Driving in your car and you're in traffic. Nobody's doing that as much now.
Yeah.
But maybe you're at right here on the corner. Our traffic light
Takes forever.
so long. So I use that as my all right. It's just my little connection. I take 10 seconds to reconnect to myself. When can you detoxify and reconnect? Moment to moment. Those moments to moment. If you didn't get it in the morning because whatever the kid threw up, or you're late for something because you overslept, it's like the moment can come at any time, but the daily practice is the foundation, so that when you're out of your norm, you know how to recapture it. So always, if there is any one thing that can clear your path or to get you reconnected, it's your daily practice.
Sure, and to put that importance in it, because the truth is, everybody has a daily practice. Some people wake up and they listen to the radio, or they're embedding themselves with information, whether it's even the music you prefer to listen to.
Yeah.
All of it is like you're setting the tone. So how about if you actually take a conscious step in it, and then you actually set the tone for something that could benefit you.
Mm-hmm.
I like that you said about what you said about even making the tea, because that's one thing we see a lot too, is that sometimes when people are at a crossroads with their own health, it's hard for them to be like, I don't have time to take all these supplements, or I got to make this juice, and I can't. That's a perfect example. Then your daily practice is obviously not serving you.
No, then you're out of you've already somewhere along the way gone out of your boundary, and you have no way to refill your battery. Mm-hmm. So now we know how you got sick in the first place.
That's a great point too, to really see yourself as a battery that you can recharge. You don't have this limited amount of energy to have babies, to wake up in the morning, to take care of your kids. That's what you're sold in the society so much. It's like, when you're this age, this is going to happen. When they're this, that's not how life is. No. We really are rechargeable batteries.
Yeah. And the story I tell to share that is my mom.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd say this to so many people, but it's valuable. I have people racking their brains and giving up on whatever aspirations or dreams they might have had as a younger person, because they didn't do it by 20 or 29 or 30. And I'm like, who put timelines on those things? My mom had 9 children. I'm number 8 of 9. And and she waited until she was in her 40s to go back to school. She got her degree, her undergraduate. She did go to school a long way, because I remember her being in school while we were in school. And she got her degree completed when she was 43. And after 43, she started teaching. And then she did 35 years of teaching. My dad died, and when she retired, she decided, well, I'm going to go back to what I really wanted to do. I want to be a painter and an artist. And she started diving into her artwork, and became really known, not because, she's outward and she's ambitious. It's because of her consistency and her her idea that it's never too late. I'm going to do that now.
And perhaps her dedication to
Her
herself.
dedication to herself. I mean, she still had all of us kids around, but she didn't give up that idea. And there was no timeline involved.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody told her you had to do it at a certain time. So at 80, she said, you know, I'd really like to have my own little tiendita. And we opened her store. We helped her open her store at 80. At 86, she was recognized by the National Endowment of the Arts, and you know, was in Washington, D.C. to be honored for her continual gifting of her work to the community.
And at 86, she's well known by the community. I'm sure most of us know exactly who she's talking about.
Esparza, Ofrenda one.
And I have to say that she's one of my personal inspirations, because when I met Elena, I was pregnant with my third child, and I had gone to culinary school, and but I hadn't really put too much into action because I was raising my 3 daughters based also on my priorities, and they were my priorities, so they got most of my time, and I didn't want to compromise that. But when I met her, I know I had an underlying guilt though towards self though, like, oh, did I waste my time? Am I going to be able to have these things that I envisioned before I had children, perhaps before I was married? And there was an underlying level there. And when she told me that story, and when I saw her mom, because that too is not just a story, you're out here, you see her mom, you know, doing her thing. She's still to this day, I use her story to young mothers mostly, because her life is she just still has stuff to do. That's why it keeps going. It's not because, honestly, she doesn't eat as well as either of us. She doesn't, but she still has, her mission isn't done. She's like, no. Well, I did this, now I'm going to do that. Yeah. And that is really the true magic of time. Time is simply existence, not necessarily, sometimes it is, but not necessarily just an aging process. And age doesn't mean that you become decrepit necessarily. Age is, you've lived these markers of time.
What age provides is the opportunity to be less concerned about what has happened, because you're like, oh, I had this trauma, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
It's like,
my world was going to end these many times.
If I got through that, what am I stressing about now? It's like, I got this. I got this. And even if I don't know what that means, I know I've been through worse. I can get through this too. And we come from people who went through worse. Like, we got nothing to complain about. We have generations who, you know, saw families annihilated, and they still made it. They still said, if the last thing I do is I'm going to keep this line going because I need to tell that story.
And which they have, because the mere fact that we could even sit here and talk about existential crisis and existential experiences in our spirit is a sign that we've moved a little past just the physical day-to-day survival. Mm-hmm. That is a gift. Yeah. When you're in survival, you're not worried about how long you had to meditate. You're out there getting food.
Yes. Yeah. When you're in survival. And the thing too about survival, it doesn't mean that you're not having these real crises or these real experiences. I'm not downplaying that at all. But and it's true, when you're in survival, there's really no room for love. There's really no room for connection.
Which is where we've seen harsher personalities in our family lineage. It comes from that.
There's very little time for creativity, even if you're in survival mode. But I just want to encourage you. You don't have to be, you don't have to do it alone. You're surrounded by community, by family, and we often don't reach out to our even own family because, I don't know, I'm not really sure why all the reasons are, but whatever the reasons are, you're not alone, and you don't have to do it alone.
What's who you see as family, right? Because I guess some of the reasons, some people, there's different dynamics, right? And maybe your family doesn't support you at all, or supports you in ways that they might not be able to address some parts or aspects of your life and what you're going through. So that goes back to also knowing yourself and honoring yourself as an extension of this planet, of the earth, because your family is, yes, it is your bloodline. Your bloodline does matter, but it doesn't stop there. And it didn't even start there, to be honest. It's an aspect of our existence. And being there for each other, I think, is very important. We spoke about judgment, and I think that's the big thing. And judgment isn't that you don't have an opinion over something or that something isn't for you. It just means that we don't categorize it into good or bad. That's going to make or break somebody. And if we do that, we might be able to invite more people to share in what they're going through. I mean, some people can't share with themselves what they're going through. They won't stop and look at their own actions in any situation. Perhaps that's where it starts, and that's that self-love. If you have that compassion to hear yourself out, if you ever find yourself using words like stupid, slow, negative connotations towards yourself, go deeper beyond that. Right? Well, why am I stupid?
Love, not,
Ask yourself why. Because when you go into those spaces is where you could see how you can honor yourself and give yourself that self-love is self-acknowledgement. If you can acknowledge you're in existence and that you're in need of something, and you will facilitate that for yourself, you're now in the action of self-love.
Yes. And that's where I say go back to your daily practice. Go back to nature, because nature is always reflecting back to you. The world is always reflecting back to you, and we don't often consider the source of that voice that says, "Oh, you're stupid again." We don't consider whose voice is speaking. We assume it is our own voice against ourselves, but that isn't. It's a conditional, generational, external voice coming through media, coming through these external sources, and we make them our own. And if we're not making our daily practice connecting to the soul within us that speaks to us in a still small voice, we're going to mistake that voice for our own, and that's what sets us back, instead of us saying, "Who the hell is saying that?" Because if I connect with my spirit, there's no other voice except that. Oh my gosh, you're loved. You're not alone. You are surrounded by your ancestors and your spirit guides, and and all that you have is enough, and everything you need is right here in front of you. There's this abundance that spirit comes through for you, and if we're not paying attention, we're going to think this other voice, which says you got to be afraid, you're alone, you're not connected, nobody's going to notice you. All that stuff is not spirit, because spirit doesn't have anything bad to say about you. Don't mistake that voice, because you're going to be locked in a limited mindset that was by design. It was by design. That's not soul's voice.
Or not your soul's voice.
Yeah.
The fact that we all experience it, there is this, it becomes an entity, it's a force that moves through.
It's definitely a force.
So that's what we all relate to it. We know that there is this shade of our own light that can be cast on ourselves, or whether externally or internally, and it continues to it perpetrates itself through our action. So if we treat ourselves like we're stupid, and we stay stuck in that, it's like a mask that you wear, and that mask is then given life, versus your own inner essence. Only that's your uniqueness, and your uniqueness is sometimes how you get angry and it's your expression. So when you honor that expression first to yourself, say, I am scared, or I may be scared to take the step, but I'm going to take the step. That is the difference between the monkey mind. I really like that one the most. The monkey mind, because the monkey
nothing
mind,
against monkeys. I like monkeys.
they could be mischievous, and it's not always towards for our own benefit.
Well, I want to go back to what you just said about that force that becomes an entity. It goes back to that old story, the story of the grandfather teaching the kid about the two spirits within you, the wolves, the two wolves. It's like there's one wolf that is just about survival. It'll steal to know whatever it's like.
It'll do what it needs to do to live.
Whatever it needs to do. And then there's another that, will kill for the whole group and will share, and there's enough. And, it's like, and the grandfather says to the kid, so which is the wolf that is going to,
which will you feed?
Which one is well, that's the line, is which is the one that's going to lead the pack and in yourself. And he's like, I don't know. And the grandfather says, the one that you feed. So if you feed the one that's telling you, you don't fit in the world, like, look, you're not the right color, you're not the right height, you're not the right whatever, you didn't come from the right family. If you're going to be enrolled in that, you keep feeding it, then it becomes this force that you believe is who you are. And truly, this is why detoxing is so important. Yeah. It goes back to the very beginning that we continue to say, when should you detox? Moment to moment, because you've been feeding the wrong wolf. So that's basically the bottom line. The bottom line is to create a place that you can step off of. You need a foundation. And if the foundation that you created was one that was fed, that wasn't even part of who your spirit is, then you need to detox that and create a new foundation. You might have to break down the whole structure of where you come from, and then reconstruct it based on the evidence of who you are as a soul body and the reflection of those around you. And even then, it's going to take time before you start to discern and recognize what is truly you and what isn't, which goes back to the daily practice. As a daily practice, you create this beautiful protection and space where you can have space between you and the world and decide what's there and what's mine. That I like how, you and I go about it a little differently, but it's the same thing, right?
Because the first world, the real world too, is your inner world. So I think that's where we're gonna always relate.
Yeah. Because
even if we have our little details, that we both begin at honoring our inner world and our what we acknowledge as our true self.
Yeah. That I just want to keep encouraging you to move whatever's within you, whatever that voice is, or whatever that fear is, or whatever that thought is move it out and put it on a tangible place. That's why I love the work of the altars too, going back to the Day of the Dead. I love those altars because you can create one for yourself and pull out those things that, you're like, this just doesn't feel right, and put it on that altar and leave it there and just like observe it, because I don't think we look at ourselves enough. We look at ourselves in the mirror, or we look at ourselves compared to somebody else, and we're missing it. And I think we just need to look at ourselves and then step away and then decide, I don't even know what that is. I'm just going to leave it on my altar and offer it up for a bit and see, who am I without that inside of me? Yes. Who could I be without that? And live a day or two with that on the sideline. One of my favorite stories is a woman, it's close to me, I don't want to say exactly, but she said to me, I was extremely jealous. Did I tell you this story? I was extremely jealous, and I had a beautiful husband, we were married, we were in love. And he got this job where he was traveling and I hated it because I knew that he was going to meet people out there and come home to me, right? And so every time he would come home, I'd be like, well, who did you meet? And blah, blah, blah. And what did you do? And, he wanted to share his story, but I wouldn't let him get past 5 words because I thought, oh, was there a woman there? And he was just like, why are you doing this to me? It's like, I just want to share my story. And it was making him miserable, and it was making her miserable. And eventually he's like, you got to stop this. It's hurting us, And what she wanted was him to come home to her and be like, oh, I miss you, and all that.
She created the wall.
But she kept getting in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
So one day she decided, on her own, thank God, that I wonder what would happen if I didn't ask that question. Like she did what I'm telling you. She took it out and she put it over there. She's like, it's a powerful little bugger. And she just like, he came home one day and he had a partner, a business partner who was a woman. And she met her and knew her, and she had her own life. It bothered her that they went to the same place together. And he came back and he's like, oh, Susie, whatever her name was. And she was like, and the voice inside said, oh, that, biatch. Like, what was she wearing? And, and she just said, okay, I'm going to just put that out here. I was like, I wonder what would happen if I didn't say that. So he starts saying, yeah, she drank, got sick or something, and I had to take over for both of us. And like, he actually had a story to tell. And then she thought, well, where did she, what happened to her? And so she said, well, what happened to her? And, I don't know. She stayed in a room, but let me tell you what happened to me. And so then she was like, okay, I'm not going to ask any more questions about it. Like, she kept doing this. And before you know it, the husband was talking about him and then her. Mm-hmm. Like, and then I thought, you would have loved this. And she was in part of his consciousness, and she would never have known if she didn't take out this little mania that she had in her head. And then
expect him to fix it.
Or explode and say, I can't talk about it. So she did that over and over again until she was no longer this other person. And she became the person she wanted to be and had the relationship she wanted to have. And jealousy just disappeared. She stopped feeding it. That's the journey that I would like for us to start to move into. But it took the courage to not give that voice the food and build her up into this monster, right?
Yeah, I think that's a greght story to start taking questions. We have about 5 minutes before we get cut off of Instagram for sure. But I think, no, it's true. That's a great story. Does anybody have any questions? We'll keep talking about it until somebody prompts a question.
Are there any questions that were written that maybe we were told before?
I didn't see any come through. I was watching this one. But again, if you have any questions
about anything, we're getting used to this.
Yeah. Well, you could type the question in. That would be the best way for us to, unless you want to be prompted in if you're on Zoom, and we can still address it on the other platforms.
Some of you have asked, is this going to be a replay? And yes, we're finally figuring out how to record it so that we're both heard and you can we can play this again.
Yes. One of the reasons I like the way we came up with it to speak with each other is because, there are times, well, I'm going to actually go to this. Can you give some encouraging words to someone with consciousness of their lack of belief in self, working to stop feeding that? So that's where we have habits that we repeat. And one of the things that an easy place to start at is, we glossed over that earlier about, like, sometimes we call each other ourselves, sorry, not each other, stupid or even controlling, maybe like you grew up being told you're bossy or controlling, and they're these, they hold like a negative connotation. So when you hear yourself saying that, like what the story she just told was, this woman was able to pinpoint something she could. So this comes down to taking self-responsibility, because she went within to say, what am I doing? What she was doing was asking questions about something other than her husband, who she loved very much. And she pinpointed that, said, okay, how about if I don't do this? That leads us into the subject that gets us mad. But you could do that with yourself too. Like, I tend to be late, not always on time. So instead of saying, I'm always late, and then
I'm
instead
a person
of saying,
who's always late.
Yeah. Or instead of saying, I'm sorry, I'm late, I'll be like, oh, thank you for waiting. I'm not going to take on that guilt, because first, then I'm not going to try to explain to you the reasons why I'm late, because I'm sure you don't care. You just wanted me to get here. And I'm going to thank you for waiting. And I'm not going to feel guilty. I'm going to have to let that go. If I want to change it, then here's my goal for the next time, set my alarm 2 hours before, or, but it's a lot about how we treat ourselves. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to apologize. Even that too, sometimes when I want to speak to someone about something, I'm going to acknowledge what I've done, but I might not apologize, because what is that going to do for you anyways? I'm going to take the time to go within, say, oh, well, this is what I do that doesn't work for me. And then you take that opportunity to not do it the next time.
That's so hard for some people though. Like, you didn't even apologize. But it's true. And that's because the person on the other end has their own stuff to deal with, right? But let's go back to the question. What was the question? That
where do you, somebody who has self-doubt, where do you start?
I'm going to say this. This is a journey that we need not do alone. We've hurt ourselves in so many ways. It literally will take you being in the company of others that light up in your presence. We often, going back to our little wolf story, we'll continue to feed the thing that hurts us. So it takes courage to move beyond that and seek out those who actually love and care for you. And we often we don't do that. We keep trying to go back to the people who don't love and care for us, hoping for a different response.
Or that voice that's not loving and caring.
Or to that voice, which is why I would say don't do that alone. Hook up to someone that it's like truthfully, it's like an addiction. That whole thing becomes an addiction because you keep feeding something that is not good for you. So like an alcoholic who's not supposed to drink, they really need to hook up with a guide and support that understands where they're at and can be a part of their accountability support group to keep them in a place where, hey, whatever the case may be, whatever you feel you are, we're here for you. So we need each other. And if your friend is that way, then you become the friend that can reflect back to them that. And then somebody, I saw a question is, how do you start self-love? Was that right?
How do you step into it and stay committed to a deep self-care, self-healing practice?
So that's like the thing we talked about. For me, it is making my bed each morning. I know it doesn't make sense, but you have to actually set this intention. So this is how I do it. Those mandas that you do when you're a kid, and I mean, not when you're a kid, like in Mexico, where you make the little trinket, it's like a foot or a heart, and you go to a church or a sacred place and you hang it and you say, God, Jesus, Mother of the earth, I leave this little offering in exchange for the healing of my son's heart, or my daughter who wants to have a baby, or my, whatever. And then we go home and we wait for the thing to happen. And if it happens, we give an offering. We walk on our knees. I'm going to say that is antiquated. It has value, but in my evolution, I feel like it's antiquated. I'm going to say that if you really want a thing, first ask what it is that you want.
Yeah,
You must know what it is. So if what you want is to feel at home and loved in your body, then you need to say that. That's my intention, number one. Number two is, what are you willing to do for that exchange?
back to number one, because that is one of the things you could compare it to alcoholic, and that is something that, so if you want to go into, use the word a deep self-care practice, so one is there's a problem, right? You got to acknowledge the problem.
Yes.
Because so where is self-care lacking? That's a question only you're going to have, because you know what you're going through every day.
Yes.
Whether you get because you're fighting with someone all the time, yourself, you're not, whatever it is, you find that you're like, I'm imbalanced and I need to take care of myself. So that's the first step, is where is the attention needed?
Yes. So number one, when you can identify it, you can actually heal it. If you can't name it, it's going to be hard to heal. And if you're not sure, go to the people that love you and say, you know, I'm having this problem. Can you tell me what I need to work on? You know, that's courage too, and it does work. Second, number two is, when you ask for what it is you want, what are you willing to do for it? And that goes back to your daily practice. For me, there was a time when I was in deep depression, a deep depression. I'm going to say serious. And I was all alone and I didn't know how to get out of it. And I prayed, what can I do? I asked my ancestors, I asked, you know, spirit, it's like, what can I do to move from this place that,
Give me a second. We have 30 seconds left on Instagram. If you want to continue to hear this, you could join the link and join Zoom.
oh yeah, on our, you can join us on Zoom in,
to either of our bios on any of our site, any of our Instagram pages. Just go and link and you'll be led into the Zoom.
And you'll go directly there. So what,
you were in a deep
depression.
I
was in a deep depression, and I prayed. I said, I cannot spend another day this way. And then I was quiet. And what I got was, make your bed every morning. And I did that. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. It doesn't seem like it's going to fix anything. But I said it was the only voice I heard. And that's what I did. And I made my bed every morning. And for a week, I felt a little better. And I was like, this is a good, but it's not enough. I'm still not able to get up and take a shower, go outside, talk to others. And I had a job. I needed to work, and I couldn't. And then I said, look, I appreciate that, but I need something a little more. And then I heard, get up and braid your hair like your grandma did when you were a kid. I mean, it was a clear thought in my brain. And I was like,
communication.
It was a communication. And I was like, I ain't hearing anything else. I'm going to do it. And so I would get up and make my bed, because that helped. And then for the first time in weeks, I went to my bathroom. I took a shower and I took all the tangles out of my hair. And I got some listones, some ribbons, and I braided my hair, not unlike very close to this. And I braided it with listones like when I was a kid. And I saw myself. I looked when I was done and I said, oh, there you are. I see you. I see you. I remember you. And it was the first time that I could feel good. And I was able to get up and I made some food for myself. I drank some tea. I felt better. And each day that I did that, I was able to get up and go outside. I went to the market and got food. I cleaned my room. In a month, I was able to go back to my office and call all my patients and say, if you're interested, I'm back to work with you. In about 6 months, I was able to pay for my own place, because somebody actually took me in because I was a mess. I was a mess, and took care of me until I was able to do it on my own. And the only thing I did was I made my bed and I braided my hair, in exchange for having my energy back and being able to feel in myself happy and able to do the job that I wanted to do. That was the point. So it's a day by day thing. I'm going to tell you your daily practice, how little it seems. Just decide to do one thing every day. Just decide to do one thing every day, even if it doesn't make any sense. Like Chrissy said, breathe in one nostril and out the other. Sweep her floor, or me, braid my hair, or my mother, water her garden. Just decide to do one thing every day and make that the prayer in exchange for